So, natural law is a set of universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable conditions which govern the consequences of behavior of beings with the capacity for understanding the difference between harmful and non-harmful behavior. Funnel 5, a free 2-day online conference.
Ignite hearts and minds.
The event that will spark truth, love, and freedom.
February 21st and 22nd, 2026.
For more information, visit freedomundernaturallaw.com.
It's time to free the warriors, my friends. We got too many people locked up by the state, and they're counting on us to use our voices.
Intention. I'm living in this world and not of it. And how can you set something free if you don't love it?
Establish our identity. We have to understand who we are and where we fit in the natural order of the world.
33.
The people who have created this system and they perpetuate this system, they are out of balance. They have made us out of balance.
I woke up this morning feeling I had something to say. I got doubts on my mind, it's time to let them fly away. It's time to unlearn poison and heal broken hearts. Go back to the end, it's time for a fresh start.
I'm repping this gameplay, cleaning my future like in a chess game. Bitches better make way, snitches make no mistakes. The slip of the tongue will make me accidentally slip a switchblade. Don't take my kindness for frivolous, take my time away from me. I'ma make you see what the fuck I call ghetto discipline, or you better grab a water bottle.
So what we have here is a multinational, multi-generational parasitic ruling class, raping the earth of its resources and driving humanity deeper into bondage. Emergent from the shadows comes a white warrior determined, resisting the system of violence and coercion. Learn how to spot the workings of the men behind the curtain.
Labor Day weekend, Soundpad to Freedom. We're going to show them what a soundtrack is like for this movement. It's grassroots, and speak the truth. Come and be part of it. Once in a lifetime, never forgotten.
I heard that one man's voice say nothing, that ain't gonna do nothing. Do what thou wilt, I'm scientific with it. Gunners, my tongue never caught me with it. Telling the truth, they said I'm doing terrific. Dope boy music for real, can't be no dope boy until you flip it. Honor the spirit, switch it. If you're a real man, free your mind, don't be half walk, half walk.
Hello, welcome to the End Evil podcast. This is Chris Jansen, and evil is the destruction of freedom. I'm really excited tonight about this episode. I want to introduce something amazing that's been going on, and if you folks have not been following around, it's called Health Revealed, and I'm going to show you a quick screen share.
What if the biggest threat to human health isn't what we've been told? For centuries, we've treated symptoms while missing the root cause.
2/3 of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure.
And in some studies, he got conformity, compliance, obedience up to 90%.
It was impossible to tell. I tried to guess. I tried to look for signs, body language, anything. to try to guess who's going to continue and who's going to stop. And that tells me that it's not that there are certain kinds of people who are obviously different from the rest of us. It tells me that probably all of us are capable.
The famous Milgram experiments shocked the world, but no one could explain why humans would follow harmful orders until now. Health Revealed brings together hundreds of researchers, medical professionals, and truth seekers to expose what might be the leading cause of death in human history: democide, death by government.
We've discovered patterns.
The connection was always there.
This changes everything we thought we knew about human health.
But this isn't just another problem. This is about solutions, real solutions, through understanding social psychopathology, integrative health, eco-psychology, natural law, and permaculture. We're bridging the gap between conventional medicine and alternative medicine, psychological understanding, and societal transformation. Join hundreds of medical professionals, researchers, and concerned citizens in the most comprehensive study ever conducted on the nature of authoritarianism in human health. Over 24 hours of groundbreaking content, hundreds of researchers, one vital mission. Health Revealed, revealing the illusions giving us illness. Visit healthrevealed.org. Join the revolution in transforming health and all our institutional frameworks.
I'm muted. Thanks so much for joining me tonight, folks. I have Leslie Powers and Cory Enderlatt live, and I'm very excited to have these guys, and hopefully Stephanie will be able to pop in. Maybe even Scott. I'm not sure if we'll get everybody tonight or not, but we're definitely going to at least give an introduction to what these amazing Natural Law Avengers team have come together to create. I'm going to first hand it off to Cory because I know you could do a far better job to introduce what Health Revealed is, and maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about what gave you this idea to contact Scott Gordon and Leslie Powers and Stephanie Mo Davis to create this Health Revealed team. Where did this all, how did your inspiration start on this?
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the introduction. Awesome clips for everybody who's out there in the freedom, natural law community. I think a lot of your viewers, a lot of mine as well. You might be curious why this project Health Revealed, and for those people who want to find true healing in this world of madness and craziness and rat race and, all the isms and ologies and people fighting on the internet, and, there's different political parties, religions, and it's hard, trying to navigate all of that. And through a lot of the works that we've done on Health Revealed, we actually navigate all of those institutions, looking at primarily the psychology of them. And so what I noticed when I held the End of Slavery Summit in 2022, interviewing Stephanie Mo Davis, Leslie Powers, and Scott Gordon, is that there was this tie between these folks talking about health and talking about how we may need to look at this health world and the healthcare systems a little bit differently. And so because we saw that there's a world of disease in America, particularly, there's a lot of fast food, standard American diet, the SAD diet. And now people are starting to see, oh, wait, we got to look at the colors in our food and the sugars and the carbohydrates and the fats and all this stuff. People are starting to become more aware of that, especially in recent years. Now is a great opportunity to intersect these realms of freedom and health and to show, like, here's the people who've been in that system. Leslie Powers, she's been in that system, the experiences she has. Stephanie Mo Davis, the experience she has. I mean, it's profound to me that I had the moral obligation to bring them together and say, we need to bring this information together. We need to share it with the world. And better yet, can we do what hasn't been done, which is the biggest project in history on the nature of authoritarianism, which I believe that is what our project is.
Wow. And that is putting the light on something that's currently in the darkness. It's the hidden aspect of our world that so many of us have come to various waking up experiences in our life. And although that term gets tossed around, the sad truth is that there are many things that have been hidden from us, and I think that's a good place to start. I want to hand the mic to Leslie next, and I think we got Scott with us here. You there too, Scott? Thought I heard him for a minute there.
Yes, I am.
Thanks for joining us. Right on. And so maybe we could kind of just take turns. And if you guys want to say a little bit about yourself, I want to send people to healthrevealed.org. Cory's and the team have done a really beautiful job there of introducing themselves. And there's a nice little intro for each person there. And I want you to go there and read the beautiful work and look at how well that's all laid out. But for now, I'll just hand it to each of you. And my first question to each of you is about the connection between the occulted nature of our reality and health. Why is our health so hidden? Why is this like a magician trick where there's something hidden from us, and then we get to a certain age and we have to rediscover what does health mean and how do we handle it? So I think that applies to your topic, and I'll hand it off to Leslie Powers at AliveThrive.life.
Yeah, thank you. So that's a big question, which I'll attempt to shed some light on. First of all, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked as a psychotherapist and clinical social worker for like 35 years, kind of crazy when I think of that. And I've been in a lot of different settings, healthcare settings, as well as social service settings and schools as well. And I mean, a very wide range. And what I've noticed, so then my graduate program was called Rockefeller College School of Social Work, Rockefeller College. And as I've come to learn, Rockefeller had a huge impact on determining the curriculums of colleges and the focus of doctors and social workers and healthcare professionals, in that there was a certain curriculum that was state, I guess, influenced, and directed the training in a certain direction. And what has been occulted is who's really benefiting from the focus of the training, and therefore the focus of the treatment. What kinds of treatments are promoted and what are avoided, neglected, ignored. And so when we talk about what's being ignored or not promoted within the healthcare system, there's a wide range of very helpful, holistic healthcare practices that are being left out. And so people go to their medical providers, to their licensed healthcare providers, with an expectation that they're the expert and that they have the answers for them. But sadly, what those answers are predominantly is a very narrow range of help that follows a certain protocol that isn't always benefiting the patient, but that is benefiting the pockets of the pharmaceutical companies or the politicians. And so what Cory's really pulled into this project, which is very unique, is the idea of statism, or the belief in government, in the belief in authority that is broken down into state governing agencies, and how this is really taking over and guiding our healthcare system in ways that is really hiding, occulting, other options for people to find wellness, wholeness, and thriving. And we're kind of blowing that out, bringing that out to the surface. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. And I think what partly brought us all together also is natural law. That has kind of been the foundational principle of what the work that we all studied in common and where we all met online. And from there, what I really love seeing is this convergence of brilliant minds and building upon what we know. And it's saying, well, why are people having a trouble recognizing this inherent principle of natural law, where human behavior, gives us these outcomes, where reality just sort of like gives us this situation based on the way we've acted, all together. And we do depend on one another and our health to operate. And Scott, I know that you have a lot of history seeing some like different methods of therapy. Leslie being a therapist of many years in sort of the more traditional way, but you have explored some alternate therapy roles and have been through some more dogmatic systems of doing that, and then found some freedom in a new way of approaching these things, psychologically speaking. And so, Scott, please introduce yourself, and if you got any other comments about how things have been hidden in the health range, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. My name is Scott Gordon, and in my 20s, I actually was a carpenter, and I attended architecture school, and I learned a lot about design and structures, things like that. I had a baby daughter and a divorce, so I moved into teaching school in my 30s. I got really interested in that. And that lasted through my 40s and early 50s. I'm semi-retired now from the teaching, especially after the COVID lockdown. I resigned in protest about the protocols being put in the schools against socialization and learning, and the mask wearing and things like that. I just couldn't go along with that, so I retired, and I'm teaching online school for homeschoolers right now. While I was in my 30s and 40s teaching, I was also a member of a cult, Scientology, and in that cult, for all the things people have heard about it, there is an effective inner work therapy, and it's been kind of sequestered from traditional psychology and psychiatry for perhaps by design. There's kind of a conspiracy theory that we could go down a rabbit hole there. It's my contention that it was by design. However, for whatever reason, Scientology became a cult, a very protective, self-protective cult, and rejecting the outside world and having rules and regulations about membership and associating with people. And so when you're not in the cult, you don't get to associate with anybody you knew, no matter how integrated your life was with. For example, I lost a family. I was in Costa Rica and had married a Costa Rican. We had a wonderful marriage. 8 years later, I'm out of the cult because I'm questioning the abuses going on in management that are being reported by people that are leaving management. So that set me in a new direction because I found a lot of value in the inner work aspects of it. And granted, that can be abused, and I wouldn't take it as is by going into the cult or just taking what is published there. But there are some extremely valuable principles that are very different from traditional psychology and psychiatry. And I'm actually in a project to sort of kind of integrate it with what we might call, since it's claims to be a religion and it has some claim to that. People can argue that point. I call it secularizing the information. In other words, making it so that a religion or membership in the Scientology cult is not required to benefit from some of the good elements of inner work that are unique and are not known in general. There's a certain sector of psychology that is accepted, something called traumatic incident reduction, and that's been kind of given to the public by a wonderful guy named, I'll think of his name, I'm sorry, it's not on the tip of my tongue, but his name is Frank Gerbode. Okay, so he actually wrote a book called Metapsychology, and the TIR is now accepted. Traumatic incident reduction is now accepted in insurance programs and for counselors to do as an official therapy. And that is kind of a rendition of Dianetics, which kind of got the Scientology movement going. Dianetics is basically the element of close your eyes and re-experience an incident. Okay, that's the simplicity of it in a nutshell. It can get very complicated depending on how you want to get the person focused or get the person down perhaps a chain of incidents to the root of it. Okay, then you're going to need to know more than just close your eyes and relive that incident over and over until it's gone or until you feel much better about it. So I'm involved in that element of it. And then the Scientology part is basically the idea that, and this is an exciting new idea, that, for example, a lot of people know that the primary tool of hypnosis is repetition. Okay, and so we know that repetition is an essential element, hidden element of mind control. Even a lot of people still don't know this, but a lot of people do now. There's the element of repetition there is done in advertising. It's done in Hollywood movies. It's done in all kinds of mind programming. Well, there's actually a reversal to that, and it involves questioning or directing by repetition, and I call it repetitive Socratic questioning. Okay, that's kind of a new term for it. It's kind of part of the Scientology package, but it's not punched up to the center like I think it should be, because this is the release of the mind control by reversal. Okay, so we're basically reverse engineering the essential mind control that's been done by the dark occultists for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Okay, so this has been known to them for a long time. And basically, we're looking for ways to reverse this and to bring someone out of mind control. So this is working very well. I'm doing a lot of experiment and research in the area, and I'm hoping to get more people involved in and trained in how this works and how it can. It's always been a pretty good life improvement therapy in Scientology, but it's one of those things you kind of have to mortgage your house to get it, or join the cult and be on staff full time. So that's how it's sequestered. And again, I believe this is done deliberately, and it was sort of like, we're going to have a section of mental knowledge, but it's going to be kept in a cult where people can't really, it's not going to be broadly used, but people will pay a lot of money for this. So my basic project has been to release this for broad use in the public. And there's been a lot of legal illusions that the Church of Scientology that people may have heard about. They're very litigious, with attorneys. And I have just bypassed. I was myself trained to be a legal assistant in Scientology. And I've kind of bypassed these legal worries about copyrights and trademarks. You cannot copyright or trademark a process or a mental help therapy. You can copyright and trademark some of the names or terms, and you can try to, because people are going to use these terms generically. Okay, so I haven't had any problem in that line. I've had some harassment in the past. I actually live in a foreign country, Argentina now, and that's helped a great deal in lessening the harassment. There's still online stuff, and Facebook has been involved and connected. So it's been kind of an exciting life, but I'm trying to make it professional, and I'm trying to collaborate with other professionals. And I ran into Leslie and Cory and Stephanie on this project, and we've looked at all this, and as well, and just to finish what I'm saying, I'm going to get over my long speech. as well, I was kind of red pilled very early. A lot of people will know the book by, I'm sorry, but a major book in the red pill community. And it came out in the early 90s. And my fiance at the time was working at a bookstore, and she got an advance copy. And I read that all night as soon as I got it in my hands. And I have Behold the Pale Horse, and it was William Cooper. Okay. So I have been very interested in kind of, at first it was politics, because you think politics is a solution because you know there's something wrong with the world. And I became a leftist at the university, right, in the 80s. So in the 90s, I read that book, and it sort of got me away from the political thing and helped me to get above politics and realize this is really deep. This rabbit hole is really deep. The techniques of control that are used on us are very sophisticated and very long in development. So basically that initiated me into this community. But again, I was in a cult, working in a cult, and we had a certain mindset we were supposed to adhere to, and I was kind of outside of that to some degree, and able to pull away from that. And it helped me when I was ready to leave the cult, because I already had that. I actually had a position in the cult, which was to be an outside facing person, to interact with the media and lawyers and things like that. And I always had one foot out of the organization, even though I had, it's called a mind trap, the cult. I was in that as well, but it was very easy for me to free myself using the techniques, oddly enough, of the deprogramming that Scientology can be, and using those techniques to free myself from the cult. And then I found Mark Passio's work, and that was the rest of the missing puzzle. So to speak, that I could actually get the philosophical pieces that were missing in Scientology and learn about natural law and right and wrong, and understand more about good and evil, which I was always interested in, and had some answers in Scientology and a lot more answers in the natural law community. So that's it. Sorry for going on for so long, but
I appreciate it, Scott. I really love hearing different folks' sort of discovery journey. We all have to keep discovering in this life, and what's amazing about this reality is there's always more to discover. And hearing how you began this questioning process, even though you were involved in a dogmatic, someone saying, "Oh, you pay us money, we teach you this thing," and you're saying, "Yeah, but if I keep asking questions, I can figure things out too," and took what you wanted, what made sense to you out of that matrix of what is just controlling other people through repetition, and instead used it as a tool that now you can help other people ask those questions and reanalyze what they can discover with that process. And I think that process is what we all need to go through to rediscover reality and to break out of the various traps that we've grown up in which many of I've described traps within traps. And you realize how many different dogmatic and structured systems are being kind of handed to us, and we have to discover, oh, there's other sides to these situations or other ways to use these tools. Cory, did you want to say anything more about the connection between things being hidden and occulted and health before we move on to the next question I got loaded up?
Well, in regards to the occult, there's always going to be certain subjects in health that I think some people are going to heavily emphasize as like, you need to know this or you need to know that, right? There's certain gurus and certain products, oh, have you heard of methylene blue? Have you heard of this or that? And I think the approach that we're trying to have here is integrative, to look at all these different options and say we're not limited to just one, or limited to just what the insurance companies say or what the government says, really helping the individual find out for themselves what is best for myself, and based on, all the different experiences and literature that's out there, because also the literature and the science can get pushed down. I mean, we share so many researchers and scientists in our work that most people, including myself, I never heard of until I found their work, right? And I had to dive deep. You're talking a lot of individuals from Brazil, people who had faced depression themselves. Like when I talked about soma therapy in our work, this was a therapy that was in many ways outlawed in Brazil. And it was bringing people closer together than their own families through the use of martial arts and through the use of just connecting and using certain psychological techniques. This guy that invented the therapy, he was known as an anarchist, and he said it's not going to come through people, just throwing fire in the streets and burning down things, or even political. It has nothing to do with that. He says it's all psychological, helping people free themselves. Like you said, barriers upon barriers or traps upon traps, get down to their most authentic self. And so he realized that's a very painful process sometimes. People have to tear, people have to sweat, people have to work it out, right? So this is soma, this is body, this is emotion, getting out of the mind. It's a whole process of integration or enlightenment, which is not so pretty, but destructive at times. There's processes to this, right? There's mapping that we have in our seminars where there's circuits of consciousness, as it is said, or the Hawkins scale, the scale of consciousness. There's many depictions about this throughout history, even the chakra system as well. And so we kind of help people navigate all these different nuances and all these different models and researchers to see these underlying patterns that exist among all of them. So I would say for all the people, especially, like I said, the people who mainly follow a lot of your works, Chris Jansen, the work that I've done on slavery, for instance, Will Keller, the work that he has done, Mark Passio, to understand that anarchy is evolving as a concept, because many people think of it as chaos. Many people think of it as, the A with the circle, or red and black, and communism or socialism and left-wing dogmatism. It has evolved into voluntarism and anarcho-capitalism, where it's like, wait, maybe capitalism isn't the enemy and maybe we can have free markets. I am trying to say, well, wait, what if there's actually more progress to be made on anarchy, not just the concept of freedom? Because what about the psychology? And as Dennis Fox, a common researcher in this field, said, there's barely any books connecting anarchy with psychology, but yet the connection should be there, because you have researchers like Seymour Saracen who are saying, hey, the central anarchist insight is that people want a sense of belonging. They want to belong to a community, but they also want to have a sense of individuality. And that balance between the two is the foundation of the struggle that we've had as humanity for thousands of years, creating all sorts of governments. So anarchy, or this idea of this freedom that we want internally, is something we cannot resist, but we need to further understand. And when all this research is pointing toward psychopaths and sociopaths wanting power, and then Machiavellianism as well being tied into that, and narcissism, and they want power, and that power corrupts people physically, not just mentally, and that basically we can have order naturally through nature, through the Taoist teachings, and through some of these psychological teachings. It really puts things on its head. Like, maybe it's not that we are inherently evil, or that we need to control other people to make them good. Maybe we just need to approach this with a little bit of understanding about human psychology. How do you raise a kid? Are we punishing them to make them obedient, or are we teaching them morals, for instance, right? And this is just a basic foundation. But going down this chain of events, okay, there's trauma from one generation to the next, and there's war, and then it permeates generations, and people don't know why they feel the way they feel after thousands of years of history. It's not a surprise we're confused and we're trying to find ourselves. Frederick Bastiat said that superstition would be toward the origins of civilization. So we're continuing to evolve. And I'm simply providing accountability, showing sources, saying, hey, here's a new way of looking at things, right? And so for everybody out there in the truth and freedom community, recognize the power of psychology, I would say. And then it really can get to the root cause, because we often say, right, the mind, the mentalism creates our actions, which then creates the world. So let's look at it.
Yeah, real eyes, right? Like you can look with your eyes kind of blurry and just cast a quick gaze over things and get the basic idea, or you can use your real eyes and you really look at things, not just the physical aspect, but what do these things mean? Why are they here? Like Scott pointed out, asking more questions. Like Leslie's pointed out, experiencing conversations with more people, and our connections to each other and our experiences all being unique coming together is part of why I think what you 5 people are doing is so 4, I'm sorry, there would be 5 of us if Stephanie was here, and hopefully she will, but I do want to share something of her work that I think kind of stuck out for me as I was listening. Stephanie tells a story of going, she kind of tells her point of view more from being a patient point of view, whereas, Leslie was kind of like the therapeutic, and Scott has been a teacher, and Cory has also been a teacher of, various methodologies of health. And then Stephanie, although she is now very much a teacher in her own right, likes to really describe her experience of what she went through as dealing with these physical maladies and being diagnosed with these problems and having to go through this system. And doctor after doctor after doctor, she finally meets a doctor that says, Stephanie, how are you doing? And just literally like takes a minute to just ask her how she's doing. And she realizes, man, this is way bigger than they're trying to treat me like a machine, like a clock. Did we put in this? Did we put out that? Did you take the medicine? Did you not? It's all just addition, subtraction, what's on the computer. And when someone actually took a minute, and looked deep, she says, then I had this realization, and it's like a revelation, right? Like you're describing, this thing is being revealed that our systems aren't caring for us like humans. They're treating us like machines, like we're just objects, and we need to reinvent and re-realize. And the Renaissance is what you're talking about, Cory, that Will and I have described too. How do we show people a better way to do things that doesn't include all this treachery and doing things for money, and actually care for people's health? And so my next question for all of you,
Chris, before you do
ahead,
the
Leslie.
question, I wanted to add one thing that I think is important, that bounces off what Cory said and related to what's been occulted. And I think what's been occulted is the knowledge of ourselves that we have. I think it's been very deliberate that in schools they don't teach kids about their own psychology. They don't teach kids about how their nervous system works or their own physiology. And we've come to really see that the body is a part of the mind. The body-mind is interconnected. We're a system, mind, body, and spirit. And that this is knowledge that's being compartmentalized and held in the offices of people given certain access, right? Certain degrees, like the cult behavior that Scott was talking about is happening in the whole healthcare system, actually, where information is being restricted and compartmentalized, and it's being held from the average individual who then doesn't really understand how their own mind-body system works. And I think that that is the most powerful information that anyone could have, because when you understand how your mind-body energetic, physiological, and psychological system works, then you know how to, in a sense, treat yourself and solve problems, both individually and in community. And the community aspect of health is also been occulted. And in fact, the opposite has been encouraged, of keeping us more separate. So this whole concept of compartmentalizing and hiding truth and separating people, all very, very foundational.
Yeah, compartmentalizing brings me back to school. You get all these kids of close to the same age from a random zip code and just shove them in these rooms and expect everything to be cool. Like, you're going to learn this stuff, and my body and soul resisted that in many ways. I didn't understand at the time. It was very traumatic for me. But shoving people together like that, of all different races and religions, and they try to make it sound good, but you're forcing something that isn't a very natural process. And that's not the way it's gone down through most of history. And so it's hard for us to recognize how weird it is, the way we've all been kind of shoved together and pushed into these situations like, no, you have to show up every day. You have to follow these rules, stand in line. And this causes stress. And all these different types of stress express themselves in our lives, in our addictions, in our problems, in the way we treat one another. And like you're saying, Leslie, in the very beginning, we should be working a lot on dynamics, on human dynamics, and how we treat one another and how we care for one another. So one thing I noticed in all your work, from Stephanie's to Scott's to Leslie's and Cory's, the way you all speak, is there's this undercurrent of sort of bringing to light this aspect of stress that we deal with that they don't really talk about very much in the medical establishment or in school. How do we deal with stress, and what's the relationship between our health and our stress level? If you guys want to go around and comment on that, I'd love to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah. Perhaps more specifically, we could say fear, and then to a greater extent, trauma. Right. So, I think, Leslie and Scott and Stephanie have delved a lot into the subject of trauma, and it helped me understand it too, because again, they have a lot more experience than me in the field. They see it, they experience, they talk to a lot more people. And so, I had a health coaching career. I was talking about nutrition, but naturally when I would talk to people about their health, it would never really be about nutrition. It would be about their upbringing, their exercise, their relationships, their spirituality, their career. And that mattered more to their health. And some of these cravings for food that they had came from a lack of fulfillment in these other areas. So we would call that an integrative nutrition primary food, and actual nutrition or food secondary food. Right. And so that would be something that would have to be addressed first and foremost. And that's how you actually build a relationship with someone. You get to learn from them. Like you said, we live in a very mechanized world. At least we call it like the Western world, but it's across the East as well. It's across the whole world. People are being treated as machines, at least if they are given this number line of, you must take this drug if you have this disease, the pill to the ill. And this, like, oh, we have all the statistics and we figured it out, and here are the scientists, and this is the consensus, and this is what you should do. And if you don't do this, well, then we're going to take away this. If you don't do this, we're going to do that. Right. So there's this limitation in this, oh, I must do what I'm told to do. And this sort of moral obligation inside of us that says, well, I have to do that because everyone else is doing it, or because of the pressures and because of the money. And so that creates a lot of stress that's built up. And then people want to push that down and say, well, I don't have to look at it. Maybe I could distract myself from it. Maybe I could find an outing to release the stress. Maybe it's exercise, but never really address the source of stress in the first place. So we're trying to get to the source of it, not just try to treat it. In the same way with medicine, it's about how do you treat the disease, but also prevent it. And for the disclaimer out there, since we're on the internet, we're not trying to cure or prevent or treat diseases. For the FDA out there, not like we care. But, the point is that we're trying to heal people as a human. And the fact that I have to make that disclaimer is already a sign of, are we really living in a human world? See? So, and we talk a lot about that in our seminars through the lens of eco-psychology. There's a whole field for that.
Can you prove that you're human real quick? Because I need to see how many bicycles are on this image.
Well, you're right. The distinction between real life and the illusion is becoming harder for people to realize, especially with artificial intelligence. And, some of my works points to this thing of natural intelligence, the emphasis on nature, right? Nature is the answer to say, wait, what are those things that are most fundamental? What is it that created artificial intelligence? What is it that it claims to serve? We get lost in these mediums, whether it's money or religion or government, because we proclaim we need them for something else. And so we get stuck in that medium for happiness, for our goal, when we can actually achieve happiness or our goal right now without those mediums. But we create this perceived dependency, which actually creates like a learned helplessness. It makes us weaker. We feel like we don't have the will and we don't have the answers all around us. And we're trained and taught that there isn't cancer cures all around us. And so we're left dependent on the systems that say, oh, well, we have all the answers for you. You must externalize your authority, the external locus of control, or just internalize their locus of control so much that you just ignore everything else because you want to go off grid and just defeatism, escapism, run away from the rest of society and say everybody else is crazy. Both of those are extremes. And so navigating that is exactly what we try to do through masculine and feminine, through saying, hey, you want to evolve into the chakra system, you want to become enlightened. Well, anger, fear, these are still natural. Right? It's just about how you manage it, how you control it. It's not that we say fear and trauma, like it's never going to happen. The birth process is rather traumatic on its own. It's that we learn how to accept it, in fact, in order to work with it.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on this topic around stress and health. So stress is a natural part of life. We can't avoid stress. Like Cory said, birth is a stressful process. It's physiologically, it's difficult for the body, right? And, we can do things like cold plunges, which is creating a stress on the body. Some of these stressors, though, are actually creating resiliency in the body, right? And can strengthen us. But then if stress, though, is prolonged without an escape, if it's overwhelms the system where a person doesn't have the opportunity to reflect and process what's happening or properly rest and digest, if those stressors are just hitting you one after the other, it becomes overwhelming. And a person then does not have the chance to decompress. And this type of stress is underlying most modern day diseases. Most chronic diseases are stress related, and stress will exacerbate any medical condition, right? So reducing stress and learning to manage stress and balance our lifestyles so that those unnecessary, overwhelming stressors, aren't what our life is all about, is what's really important. So we're thinking, well, how do we do that in this modern world where economically we're strapped, where we have to make a living? The economic system plays a big part. We're trained from our school systems to disconnect from our body's signals. Our body is brilliant, and it gives us signals naturally of when we need rest, when we need to go to the bathroom, when we're thirsty, when we're hungry. And we're programmed out of paying attention to those signals in order to fit into a false, kind of a man-made system or structure, whether it's our job or our school system. And then over time, we just have learned to disconnect from our bodies and kind of operate from what? From a mental construct that's been kind of taught to us or programmed. And that over time sets up a weakness really in our body. We wear it down. We break down at a certain point from unmetabolized stressors, traumas, emotions that aren't processed, emotions that aren't felt. And we have a culture where we stuff our emotions, where we hide, we run, we avoid, we feed, through excess. We feed our taste. How do you want to say? We're operating by our taste buds, and we do emotional eating. People have all sorts of addictions, right? So this is then add more stress, right, to our lives. So it becomes this never-ending cycle that we're trapped in if we don't become conscious and really slow down. I think slowing down our lifestyle and reflecting on our lives and giving ourselves habits that where we are daily sort of reflecting, decompressing, getting in touch with our natural body signals. This is all really important. Otherwise, stress will kill us, literally.
And when we work with getting to trauma, stress is kind of the surface. It's what's happening in your day-to-day life, and it is rooted in trauma. But oddly enough, you don't always have to get to those root traumas to get a lot of benefit. Just being able to talk out the stress on the surface produces amazing results. Like Cory mentioned, people can get transformation through talking about and alleviating their stress in their health. And not to mention other areas of your life, like your marriage, your family, your job, your groups, the way you view mankind and interact with mankind. So all the way up and down the line, spiritual, emotional, and physical. Just the action of alleviating stress with a good listener can do amazing things. And so if you're wondering where to start, that's a great place to start. If you can't find a good listener, oftentimes you have to be your own good listener. And that means journaling and giving yourself some love and some care, and realizing that you are your own best helper sometimes through your journey. And also, just because you can do that, you continue to accept helpful people in your life when it's available. And you can get rid of a lot of stress doing simple things like that.
I've often imagined. I like to imagine some of the things that would entail a more freedom-based world. And I often get this from people where they say, "Oh, we could never survive without government," or we could never survive without our health system, and I imagine like you're not feeling right and you walk into this sort of, maybe it would even look like a cave on the outside. As soon as you come into the health center, they hand you like a warm towel and bring you into a spa, and this gentle music's playing, and someone brings you some grapes and turns the fan on and asks you if you could have a foot massage, just carrying about you. I would think probably 9 out of 10 people came in through that cave door would probably be, all he needed was 10 minutes of that. So much of this activity that we do in this realm of experience is in our mind. And we talk about, we're teaching natural law. It's also the understanding that we all are involved in this slavery thing that's going on. And it's not like the type we were taught in the mainstream where we're locked up in chains and we're just using a hoe or, chipping rocks all day. It's more like this subtle kind of world where we're stressed out because the bills are due and we have to go get our driver and we have to do this, or someone's going to pull us over, fine us, or put us in, like those are the underlying stress that are amping up all these other problems. Right. But you guys talked about some of the underlying reasons why we get traumatized and why we have this fear. And that kind of brings me to my favorite topic, which is the topic of philosophy. The word philosophy means the love of wisdom. Philo meaning love, and Sophis means wisdom. And so I thought that would be another good bridge towards health and philosophy. How do these things tie in? It's very similar to the stress, but it goes deeper. I think often our beliefs have a lot to do with the type of stress and the way we live and the decisions we make and why we wind up in poor health conditions, or why we're not able to find the solutions as easy as we should. So maybe I'll hand that off to Cory.
Yeah, it's first thing that comes to mind is Scott calls himself a philosophy-based counselor. He's like, my work is based in philosophy, and that's the term he uses. And I think that's a good term to use because in many ways, a lot of people are counselors without realizing it. I just want to say that first of all. I mean, parents who care for their kids in a way are a counselor. And just as you guys demonstrated, I have a saying recently, walk up to wake up. I walk up to strangers on the beach or wherever I am, and literally everywhere. I'm just looking around me constantly, and I'm observing people and seeing, who's open, who's alive, who's not an NPC, right? but who is generally looking distressed, who's looking alone. Like I look for people to help when I go places, because I know the smallest gesture or the smallest thing could maybe help them and brighten their day. Leslie says there's like a whole book about that. You can probably mention that if you want. But it helps people to just start that conversation, and I encourage other people to do that, especially in this space. As an action step, is just start talking to people, everybody, and it shouldn't be hard. And I know there's a lot of talk about, oh, these people don't listen, and these people are asleep, and this and that, but that's going to keep us away from being the counselor that we can be. Because when we listen and we sit down and we have a beginner's mind and we're truly empty and we allow anything to come our way, that's when we could be of most help to them. And that's when they can be most receptive to whatever we have to share with them. And ironically enough, when we want to learn some of the most profound truths in this world, we have to drop everything that we have been taught. And this is like an unschooling process. That's literally what it's called, people taking their kids out of the school system. But it's also, in the Tao Te Ching, it talks about this idea of the unlearn all the things that you were taught. It's a common theme, again, among enlightenment, that there's this destruction, not so much like, oh, I'm this amazing person who has all these abilities. It's not the prettiest thing, because people can feel very off-put by it. Say, oh, well, everybody would love someone who's enlightened. And it's like, you might think again, right? It's like Jesus and all these figures throughout history, they may have been worshipped by some, but also by others. It's like, burn them, put them on the cross, right? So what I'm saying is people should be themselves and look out to other people to help them be themselves. And I think the role of philosophy is to find deeper truths, which may end up that you are at odds with other people. But if that's the case, so be it. It's not your intention. Your intention is to help other people. Your intention is to heal the world, right? And I think everybody generally wants that. They just maybe don't know how. Well, if you're watching these videos or part of these communities, I think it's very fortunate that you have all these different people who have the same goal of trying to find the truth and then sharing all sorts of different solutions. So I can read your book, Chris, or I can look at Leslie's work, and it's like tons of solutions right there that most people don't know about. So again, how do I bring it to somebody? That I think is even, just as important as learning. So philosophy is one thing, but then putting that philosophy in action is another thing. Because some people, if you talk to them about philosophy, they'll think, oh, this is all theoretical. This is not important. How am I going to apply this to my life? But everybody lives by a philosophy. Everybody has a diet. They just don't call it a diet. They don't call it a philosophy. And that could be part of the problem. They never really sat down and asked themselves the question, what is my philosophy? What are my principles? What am I eating? And so basic, overarching, high mileage questions can help someone think about something they never thought about before. And then the next time they go and do something, or next time they hear it, they start to take it into deeper consideration. So you're planting a seed.
I love Mark Passio's quote, wisdom is action. And I try to live by that. I think when we, get a better hold of our philosophy and we're able to share it effectively when we've thought it through, then that it becomes real in another way because other people can observe it. And I know, Leslie, you're just in the last couple of years, the amount of work you've put out is just astounding. And Cory just always blows my mind with the amount and depth and scope of content, books, and videos, just constantly coming at people and providing all these resources for folks. Maybe one person realizes things in one way and another person has to realize it in the other way. And that is why it's so beautiful to have this group and this team that can express these things in a different way. Leslie, what else would you say about the connection between philosophy and health?
Yeah. So to connect some of the things that have already been said is the importance of asking questions, right? Philosophy is about finding truth. And to find truth, we need to be curious and ask questions. And part of this questioning is around things like, why are we here? What is our purpose? What is God? What is it that we're here to do? What a purpose, value, and mission. I think ultimately people are searching for a sense of purpose. They're unsure of the value of their own life. And that is at the core of it. Chris and I talk about that. And so that is very important when it comes, you have to think philosophically, to find answers to those questions that inner work, that deep dive into self-inquiry. To wonder, why am I suffering? How can I, why is it important to stop suffering? How can I be a part of that? These are all philosophical, ultimately philosophical questions. And it brings us to questions around interconnectedness and ultimately, what do we do? Why is our body important? Why is it important to eat healthy? Why should that matter? So the questioning is a key here. So I'm going to pass that on to Scott.
Muted.
Thank you. Another aspect or element of philosophy, or just a simple simplification of it, is it's the big picture. How do you view the world, the universe, your own purposes, your long-term purposes and goals, such as why you are here? And for those who haven't seen Mark Passio's work on the worldview schisms, schism means ripping apart or losing half of yourself, okay? He outlines at least two major worldview schisms, and these have drastic effects on our health. So philosophy does relate to health, although it may not appear so at first. But your worldview has a great deal to do with how positively you view life and others, and whether you've been able to take that objective reality of dealing with the world and integrate it into your own subjective reality and your own mind. And this is why working on yourself, the inner work, working on your mind, can have a profound positive effect on your worldview as well. And it starts to really help. And earlier I mentioned some tips, and something Cory said gave me the other side that I wanted to. I mentioned that accepting help and accepting others listening, good listening friends or family that can help you talk out your stress. The other side of that is service. Service is the doorway to spiritual enlightenment and spiritual understanding, and will really get you into the realm of philosophy, because I believe that spirituality is big picture and is philosophy, and that religions, to one degree or another, not most of them not very good, have a philosophy. And in fact, I realized that, for example, Scientology and counseling was based in a philosophy, which is why I called myself a philosophy-based counselor, because the practitioner needs to be aware that whatever you're selecting to work on in counseling has to do with a big picture understanding of what this person needs or could improve to become a better person, to become happier, more successful dealing with the world. So the relationship between philosophy, the inner work, and health it's like a incredibly important triangle. And I just want to lead by reemphasizing that taking up service is a wonderful way to extrovert your attention off your own problems, interact with helping others. It's an exchange back and forth, and you'll find that you're getting more of your needs met when you look to help others and meet their needs.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Scott, and something I like to talk about in some of my work. I see the tree of life as a symbolic representation of the fact that all of life is connected, and it's this, from the time we're born, we need others to live. We cannot just live solitary from the time we're infant. It's an integral aspect of being human, and I think that kind of getting closer to these integral pure forms of nature and reality, and recognizing some things are fundamental is part of this realizing what reality is, not what we were told, not what these structures tried to force down our neck, but recognizing that change is all around us. And part of becoming change is one of the chapters in my book called Becoming Change, is this aspect of recognizing that reality is change. It's constantly cause and effect relationships, and we're getting mirrored back through our relationships. How would we feel when we do that? How do other people act when I do this or that? And that's how we get this understandings, right, and realizations. So going forward, I think it's change is what I call the monster under the bed. Everybody's scared of it and they don't want to change, but it's the only way out. It's the only way forward. And so I wanted you guys to talk about the relationship between health and change, because what else is getting healthy or getting past some illness but making a change, right, or being part of a change. And so that's been a theme on my podcast as well. I hope Stephanie shows up, because I know she would be a great one to answer this question. I know she's gone through very intense changes, but whoever wants to go first. Change.
Well, I'll point out that change is itself a stress. And as Leslie alluded to, or actually spoke out on, not all stress is bad, and not all change is bad. Okay, so change is a stress, and it can be a stress that helps us grow, or it can be something that makes us stumble, and we have to reevaluate who we are, how we're doing things, and that's where we make our changes internally, and those are opportunities to make those internal changes. So we're faced with a changing world and changing circumstances and changing people, changing attitudes. And so we have to be able to accept change, but we also have to be able to change ourselves to adapt, or to not all change is good, and not all changes should be adapted to. We have to have the wisdom to know the difference.
Sure. Leslie, you go. I'll go last this time.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, I recently read a statement about a summary of a research around people's habits, and people have a tendency to choose comfort, before anything else. And there's something around comfort equating safety and the familiar. What is known and familiar, it feels safe and it's comfortable. And however, ironically, that desire to be safe and the choice of comfort often really results in putting oneself in harm's way, whether it's trusting, the government, or it's, choosing the comfort of your recliner instead of exercising your body, or the familiar mac and cheese you were raised with, right? So there's a very direct component to emotional safety. And what Cory alluded to in the beginning around fear of change, right? Fear of change. And the fear is the mind killer, right? As in Dune says. And that the fear is generally much more blown up in our minds than it is in reality. And I see that every day with people. People are afraid to feel their feelings. They're afraid to open up a memory. They're afraid to go out the door sometimes, to leave their house. They're afraid of, all sorts of things that are ultimately pretty irrational. And so again, it brings us back to psychology as being really important here, and self-awareness and self-knowledge, and understanding the traumas, stressors, and unresolved issues that have led up to this somewhat of neurotic living, where we're choosing comfort over truth, comfort over change, right? And so people do need support, and these helpful people, ultimately And I think it also goes back into our childhood of really not having proper parenting in the sense of learning how to self-soothe, learning how to be empowered and confident in oneself and one's choices, being told what to do instead of learning how to think, right? So people, end up in a very sense of vulnerability and are resisting those things that are foreign, that create a sense of challenge, or they might be embarrassed by or feel shame about. And Stephanie's here. So yeah, but you were right, Chris. Like, change is is an essential component of becoming healthy and of adapting to life. Adaptation is key for health.
Wonderful.
Yeah, well, let's welcome the wonderful Stephanie Mo Davis. I told a little story for you, Stephanie. I told your story from the show about going to all these different doctors, and finally the one that asked you, "How you doing, Stephanie?" And that was just such a big realization. We talked a little bit about how health is related to things being hidden and occulted, and then we got a little bit into health and stress and how trauma and stress, define. And so these are some of the topics that, and then the philosophy and how it's related to health. So I just thought I'd catch you up on some of the discussion leading up to now. And then we were just talking about the important aspect of change and how health, addressing health issues, we have to go through changes, and change is an inherent aspect of reality and natural law and all that. So that's a big giant world full of ideas to fill your brain. But maybe you could just kind of introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about why you're here.
Thank you guys. I'm so sorry for being late. I had a conflict with another podcast I did with a really wonderful functional medicine doctor who's very open to all of this. And it's so refreshing when you come across a provider who gets it. So I just want to say my name is Stephanie Mo Davis. If you guys don't know me, was a yoga teacher, yogi, spiritual seeker for a very long time at a young age. That started for me, and got my own illness when I least expected it. And weird, I was at a very healthy point in my life, but I really came across this crazy illness, an autoimmune disease. And man, that's really been the catalyst for my own awakening, realizing what my body truly needs. A body truly needs to be healthy. And then understanding where Western medicine gets it right, which is really, in my opinion, the technical side of it, technicians and surgeries, they really, really get it right. They're really sharp with a lot of that stuff. But where, I also learned so much of my treatment was actually the inversion of what I really needed. And I can see so clearly after being a patient for over half of my life, 28 years, I've been a patient. At many prestigious institutions, I can just see how vastly we're missing the mark for so many patients. And it really broke my heart, honestly. And, I had continued to do my own research even through my illness. And just to kind of feed into what you guys are talking about now, I got to hear Leslie just a little bit talk about change there is in terms of your health, and especially amongst the civilization that we're a part of at this time and the history that we're experiencing. Change is a non-negotiable. I mean, you got to be all in. It's just that you got to be all in, and you got to be your own researcher, and you got to educate yourself, because there's nobody that is going to do it for you. So as Leslie said, change is such a critical part of being healthy and educating yourself, and you got to look outside the box. And I think that's probably why all of us know each other here, because we've all had dove down a ton of rabbit holes. And every rabbit hole that I've been in was painful when I got to the bottom.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe. I was utterly in shock and awe of what was being obfuscated, what was being hidden on purpose. I mean, at first I think, oh, maybe this is just naivety, and maybe I have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And the more I dug, the deeper I went. Maybe that's the case for a few people, but I started to realize that there's fear permeating so much of our society, and it keeps people attached and in compliance to systems that actually are causing more harm than good. And I think a lot of us are becoming aware of this. And I'm so happy to be connected with you guys, because I know that all of you guys have been down the rabbit holes and you didn't get stuck there. There's people who don't survive that kind of information. The darkness can kind of overcome you. You have to be a very strong soul to face evil and to go into this research and really understand what's going on in the world. It's very shocking,
Yeah.
So I say to all you guys, thank you so much for your dedication to facing the evil, doing the research, facing the evil, and then also facing the evil within all of ourselves to be able to navigate it out in the world. It's again, you got to be all in, period. There's no other way around it.
Yeah, that's commitment. And another beautiful thing I'm taking away from what you're saying is something else that Scott was kind of alluding to as well, is kind of like recognizing your own independent needs and then being able to make that sacrifice to step away and help others, and that's so powerful. And I think one thing I've noticed is a crazy parallel in so many of the people that are now natural law teachers are talking about it publicly, is that a lot of us have faced some physical malady that we've gotten to a point in life that it forced us to start really asking some hard questions. And there's nothing like a lot of pain and uncomfortable to make you like really drop your belief systems and be like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I thinking wrong? I'm going to try something different because this ain't working. And so, we embrace change, and that opens the doors to let go of some of those belief systems that might have been trapping us. Yeah, I think, Cory, were you going to pop in next?
No, it's up to you if you want to keep moving forward. I could always add on to what you guys were saying, but I could do that any time as well.
Cool. Scott, do you have anything else more you wanted to say about change and that topic?
I mean, I have a lot I could say about change. If you want, for instance, right? And here's another solution that I think, because I know that most of, like I said, our audience, they're mostly already freedom oriented. And lately I've delved a lot into permaculture and food forests. Well, there's also the conversation about terrain theory and germ theory, right? So when we heal the environment, or we're surrounded by a really good, healthy environment, like you gave the example of, I walk into this clinic and they give me a foot massage, they give me grapes and all this stuff. I'm thinking right there in my back of my mind, that's a food forest. Somebody walking through the food forest and saying, this is amazing. Oh, do you want this grape? Here you go. And just relax, because that is literally how it felt for me when I went to Jim Gale's place in St. Cloud. So I believe that all of us can create that no matter where we are, and we can network with other people to create these beautiful environments that allow these types of conversations to happen with everyday people, so that way the shadows can open up more easily, and then the whistleblowers from these systems can also more likely be willing to change, because change will also be a variable that becomes more accepting as the culture and the surrounding environment says, hey, it's okay. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to be different. You're allowed to speak your mind. Now, of course, again, there's the extreme and a nuance to this that, everybody's got to speak up and be like their own like little hero here. I'm a content creator and I'm a victim, and you got to pour out cries, tears from me, and make sure you give me money, right? There's people who overly take this where it's like, I'm this, and now I'm going to show the whole world. I'm going to get tattoos on all my arms and piercings, and I'm going to go show everybody. I'm going to make a whole brand out of it. There's different ways to approach that, right? But again, can we be ourselves? Because that is foremost, I think, what we're talking about when it means, returning to nature and know thyself and philosophy and change. Like, what are we changing toward? Are we changing toward a new ideal, a new cult, or are we changing toward finding oneself, which means getting beyond all of those, right? And then potentially creating our own, and then helping other people create their own, be their own doctors, their own leaders, their own, right, etc., their own teachers. And so there's a lot of parallels between these all these institutions because of the underlying psychology that we're talking about within our work. And the funny thing is when you were talking about psychology and you were talking about spirituality, and you guys were relating those two, you can look at like the old-fashioned gurus or the people like Jesus Christ or Buddha, and you look at their writings and you look at the psychologists nowadays like Jordan Peterson or Carl Jung, and they have this fascination with these texts. I don't think it's a coincidence. These works are deeply psychological. So in a way, these were some of the original psychologists, you can say, and they were helping people see paradox. They were showing the unexpected. They were showing different points of view, which is parallel to that of life, in which you face all these different trials and you have to look at different parts of your brain and different parts of life that you may encounter or that you previously encountered that you did not see within yourself. It's all about opening the mind. And the same thing could be done, in the natural law community, which I've been encouraging a lot, is can we expand our mind and evolve past the concepts of natural law to where we don't have to say natural law or even Mark Passio's name or use his definitions? Because if we truly understand it, then we can truly share it with other people because it's in their language or it's in that environment or it's in a better way that, is better for me to teach, not because that's his style, right? So, and I'm sure Mark would encourage that. He's teaching other people to how to use technology so they could become a presenter. But would he want someone to just be a carbon copy? No, right? He wants them to be their own teacher of similar knowledge or maybe similar goals. And we all have similar goals, right? We want to be healthy, we want to be happy. So we have these goals, but then how we go about that, I think the authenticity is important. And then seeing all these different options like food forest, seeing the body, maybe exercising, because that also can change the mind. So this is what I mean by change is like, can we see the holistic picture before we say, okay, I'm going to change this one thing? Maybe it's something else you have to change. Maybe it's your posture. Maybe it's your sleep. Maybe it's your hydration. And meanwhile, you're looking all over here, looking at all the food that you're buying, right? Meanwhile, it's just as simple as that. You never know.
Well, and that has a lot to do with why I brought up philosophy. I think 2020 was a rough year for me, and I think it was for a lot of you folks. We saw the whole world kind of at once just sort of fall for this headline, and it occurred to me while we were talking tonight too that people tend to call this alternative health. Like mainstream health is the main way it should be done or something, and that all these other things like meditating and breathing and jogging and having conversations with people, that's therapeutic. Those are all alternative, which, all through history leading up to the last couple hundred years, all the alternative health were mainstream. And so there's this flip that's happened, and it was pretty evil the way things went down in COVID. And from my point of view, I've made several videos about it. I call scientism the new religion. And I think even government is starting to lose its hold to some extent. It's gotten so silly and ridiculous. I mean, a lot of people are still all in it, which is too bad. But there's enough people starting to realize how dumb it is that these social engineers are one step ahead, and they're already coming out with this whole new religion of scientism. We can control the masses. Even if everybody's able to say, oh, I don't like these rules. Oh, we tell them they're all going to get sick from this thing we made up, or that we're propagating to be much worse than it is. And boy, we got them. We still got them. So, scientism is our new enemy. And I'm not sure if you guys all agree with me on that. You don't have to. But going forward, being with what we just went through with COVID and how bad things can get with, authoritarian control, maybe we can just explore some solutions going forward and kind of leave people with as much positive solutions as we can to fight that scourge of scientism and dogmatic authoritarianism.
So, I think scientism is characterized by excluding the spirit or spirituality, and that implies relegating the idea of good and bad or right and wrong as being superfluous. What's good is what's the highest technical advance and how far we can push it, right? So I think scientism is an enemy. that and Chris, you're spot on. They've rolled it out almost on cue as something you have to embrace to be safe. And we've talked about the relationship between being safe and being able to face change and the balance that we need to have between that. And so, another word for scientism is the technocracy that they're putting in place as a new version of government, kind of a universal government. And nobody in their right mind is going to think that's okay. I mean, all the books that have been written about that, 1984, Brave New World, and a dozen other dystopian books, right, about that very thing. And yet this is what they're rolling out, and they're marketing with the same mind control techniques, repetition, appeal to the bandwagon. Everybody's got to do this. You don't do this, you're not a good person. It goes on and on. But I think one of the key solutions is the inner work and philosophy, like I said, are so connected. And philosophy, traditional philosophy, has the know thyself as of utmost importance, because it's a interaction between the objective, the big universe, and the little universe here, the subjective. And the inner work is the release from this false objective reality that they're putting there. We call it the matrix because we know it's put together with various, complexities, of mind control that get us to in the box of a belief that everybody shares, a kind of a spiritual communism, not of a good kind. And so it is vitally important that people use that triangle, finding meaning, in philosophy or religion. Religion is, like I said, a variant of philosophy. For those who don't want religion, philosophy is the thing. It's the study of objective reality or natural law, and it's kind of the overarching standards that we have for going forward. And it regulates, it's the objective that regulates the internal. And the know thyself, the subjective part of that is critical, because in order to exchange the two, you have to know yourself and what you want and what is needed out there, so that you can get into action and get those things done. So the inner work is of vital importance as our best weapon against this this new evil, this new version of evil.
I think I would like to add that all of us here, from my understanding, have been doing this work for a long period of time. And we're deeply committed to the research and the philosophy, and we're able to contain a lot of information. I think we all have a very strong cognitive side of us. And one thing that I'm working on, besides, as Scott said, the importance of continuing to do the inner work upon myself, but then sharing the importance of that through, in my lens, through the spiritual lens in the world, is I'm able to connect with Chris, I liked how you said alternative doctors, because actually alternative medicine is natural medicine and Western healthcare is really alternative, which is kind of interesting. But I'm meeting a lot of functional medicine doctors, which gives me hope, like Cory was saying, about branching natural law into different spheres and different cells of people that maybe speak slightly different, to kind of open the conversation a little bit. Some of the functional medicine docs that I've been working with lately, they've heard of natural law, or at least what they're doing is they're doing the science that really verifies the importance behind some of the fundamental practices within the natural law community. So in the last conversation that I was just in prior to this call, we were talking about the concept of being mindful of your electrons and really understanding where you gain electrons and where you lose electrons from. Now, this has a lot to do with natural law and being in touch with the natural world. So there are certain things that give you electrons, such as nature, plants, certain things in the environment, high frequency music, classical music, jazz music, solfeggio frequencies, unprocessed food, healthy food, foods that try to cut the oxidative stress. There's a whole interesting list. Relationships, emotional health in relationships is a big one that can take electrons from you or give electrons to you. So it's a nice way to branch out natural law in a biological, kind of easy to digest way, is to kind of challenge people. How many electrons are you gaining throughout the day and how many are you losing? Because it gets them into the awareness that the natural world, away from excessive EMFs, away from excessive screens, away from toxic relationships, into healthy thinking and healthy living and healthy eating and nature, is all a way to raise your vibration or increase your electron charge within your body. So to simply say to somebody, do you realize throughout your day where you're losing electrons? Because when you're losing electrons, that's in your production of energy, in your ATP. You're actually losing energy. If you're low energy or you're sick and you want to feel better, you could be low on electrons. So what are the ways in which you can increase your positive electron forces throughout your day? That comes from all of the things that we talk about in the natural law community. The philosophy and the things that I think we all love to talk about on a deeper level. I think we have to realize how much work we've all done. And we're coming into contact with a lot of people who are very new into the work or even brand new in the work. And I think the important thing is to not be frustrated at them. The reality is that there are people waking up right now. And it is a little frustrating when we've been in the field for 10, 15 plus years and we have all of this information and we want to rush everybody awake. But I think the key is to remain compassionate with people who are still struggling or on the verge and the precipice of awakening. They're new to awakening. Yes, we can have opinions about people who refuse to awaken and they comply with the evil. That's different. And there needs to be people who face that level of authority and tyranny as well. I'm not the greatest at that. I kind of know where my wheelhouse is, where I can maintain my energy source and be a positive influence towards others. But we need certain people to fight the tyranny in the depths of certain systems. And then we need other people who are working on things like Cory's talking about. Nature, permaculture, the healing, the restoration, the regeneration process. So we all need to know, where do we best thrive? Where's our sacred gifts to help in this capacity, where it could be someone's working in the healthcare system trying to raise the light, someone's doing permaculture, someone's teaching yoga for someone else, or like, what's your niche? And then how do we maintain our own energy while helping others and being compassionate? I know for myself, I went through a phase where, I was a little too judgmental over people's awakening process, and I was a little too pushy. I wanted to force it on them. I wanted to force feed them. I wanted to open their mouth and shove it down their throat. And it just doesn't work with everybody. It doesn't work. You have to find a way, and all of us have the awareness to find the resonance and do this strategically. And sometimes you do have to be a little more forceful with certain people. I've noticed within myself, sometimes I'll be surprised at how I interact with somebody. I'm like, wow, I really was a little forceful there. But I trust my intuition that that's kind of what needed to come out in the moment. And then with some people, I'm very delicate. I'm very delicate and very compassionate. And I just couldn't thank you guys, all of you guys, enough for what you do, because this is the long haul. It's the long haul.
Yeah, the big picture.
Yeah, Chris, when I set up this project in 2022, I set it as a long-term goal. If you go back on my channel in 2020, 2021, I set up specific goals for the next couple of years. And one of them was a newspaper. The other one was a summit. The other one was this project. This was on the last long-term goal. And I didn't know who would be a part of it. Originally, I had a project talking about bullying and using maybe school advertisements and diving deeper into the subject of bullying and seeing how that may relate to other systems that be. But then, to be honest with you, this project pretty much encapsulates all the other ideas and all including bullying. So because it's psychological, and bullying is just one aspect of it. Boundaries is just one aspect of it. Healing, they're all related, right? We bully ourselves, we bully other people. So yeah, I just want to say thank you, Chris. And I do have some I can say about scientism as well, if you would like.
Oh, absolutely. And then maybe after that, maybe I'll show the website and let you guys kind of talk about where we're going from here. I know you have a lot of more big plans and exciting things that people lead them forward and where we're going with this Health Revealed.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. I want your thoughts on scientism.
And I want everybody's help out there in the natural law community to join us in this project and help us outreach to different practitioners, because we will be starting up a lot of different things soon, including, I think, a show or a weekly show potentially. We're in the works of figuring all that out. As we actually have a surge of people reaching out to us from our previous interview with Mike Adams, which was awesome. Everybody should check that out. We dive deeper into our stories and sort of the intentions of the whole project. It's on the homepage of healthrevealed.org. But scientism, I see as sort of a belief system that reinforces transhumanism. And whether that's an agenda or not is regardless of the fact of the matter that people are worshiping technology or using it more often in their life. So because they give their energy or attention to it, it grows, right? And so since I was very young, I always looked at it as a sense of you're putting your conscious energy into it, but it's not a conscious thing itself. So it's kind of just going nowhere. It's kind of like you're just distracting yourself in a way. It's like, yeah, I think I'm socializing on social media, but actually I'm not. And we find out social media is making people antisocial. And in the same way, when people are using all these AI search engines, which can be beams of light and knowledge for so many people, it may actually be making them dumber, not smarter. So technology is a very interesting thing because I believe it is used for, you can say, bad agendas because precisely it could be used for good agendas. See, now we have the greatest opportunity in human history to become freer than ever before because of technology. And at the same time, we have the same opportunity to become more enslaved than ever because of technology. So really, just like any other thing, it's just a man-made thing. It depends on how we use it as a tool. The problem is, and the reason why people get so fearful about it is because of the potential it could be used for bad. But I think if there's more emphasis on the potential for good, people would start to see, wait, maybe it could actually disintegrate the ego and show us all sorts of perspectives and reach knowledge that we never thought we could comprehend. That is magnificent. So, yeah, and of course, there's unconscious effects to it too that I think are worth looking at because we might think, oh, I am using this as a tool and maybe the tool is actually using me. That is, I think, a whole separate conversation. But I will mention one thing that is a real phenomenon. And Stephanie brought this to my attention, which I think is a particularly good example of transhumanism in action right now, which is IOBNT, the Internet of Bio-Nano Things, which you can look up as a mainstream phenomenon, can be inserted into people's bodies and can have some sort of small robot that you never really know is controlling all your actions and belief systems, and they're even potentially going to be used in the military. There's actively physicians out there. We show one in our seminar who are like, hey, we should use this technology to program everybody because, this is just the way things got to be. Like if we're going to fix civilization, again, the clause, which you see across history, to protect, to secure, to comfort, well, we're going to unleash this thing and this is what's going to be done. And they use terms like we and us and them, sort of like they're not part of that, or they are part of it, and then they're choosing what to do with other people's lives on behalf of them. And it's important to look at language because it's one thing to say something's a cult, and another to say this thing is a fanatical or fanaticism. There's a language behind it. There's a lingo, and that lingo points to ultimately what's going on. So I would say people should pay attention to the language. When AI is very supportive to people, when technology is constantly saying, good job, and supports whatever position you are at, it can seem like, okay, this is something I should use more, and maybe it's a good therapist in some regards, but actually you need someone who can challenge you sometimes. You need someone who could be human, who can feel with you. And as technology evolves, people say, oh, well, technology can still do that. Technology can still do that. But they're ignoring the underlying idea that there is something that has always been there naturally, that has all of that, that why are you recreating what nature already provides? What's going on here? Unless nature is not being fulfilled, unless something is missing right now that we're not paying attention to in nature. So if we're going to create something totally new and fix humankind, why are we fixing us? Unless something is broken. And I just want people to ask these questions and look at the language. We need to build this. We need that. It's like, do we need that? Right? It's like, again, are the answers all around us? Is truth not a forever, universal, eternal concept? We talked about philosophy. We talked about change. Change will always happen, but change itself is a constant. So these are the things that I think people can look at, so they can kind of transcend technology. God is ultimately the answer to that.
Yeah, Cory, I love what you're saying, and it reminds me, I think very truly that human beings are ultimately a phenomenal technology. We are the technology that we are not tapping because we're looking outside of ourselves and being tricked. In AI, really, what is it? It's the accumulation of human knowledge. And instead of looking out, let's start looking within. That know thyself really is, very literally, study yourself. And in order to do that, we really need to slow down, and we need to start being a witness to our own thoughts. How does your emotions feel in your body? What does your body tell you? How can you start asking yourself compassionate questions to be a witness to what's happening in your body, in your thoughts, etc., in a compassionate way, which is really important, so that you're able to receive the good and the bad and the ugly. And it's through that process that we can come to some discovery about what is real and true and facilitate healing. Because ultimately, our bodies and our minds are self-healing. There's an impetus to heal under the right conditions. As Cory alluded to, this idea of the food forest, it's creating an environment in nature itself, which then provides a stage for healing to happen. We have to be thinking about our environments. We need to be thinking about our pacing of life, where we're looking, whether we're looking without or within, and really try to create an integration through this awareness. So I wanted to add that.
Yeah, and I really like that aspect you bring up often, Leslie, about holistic, and I've heard each of you say it in different ways, kind of looking at our whole self. We change our minds, we do change the world. That's how the world changes, is by minds changing, and it can start with one or two and then leads to groups, and that leads to more and more people having that ability. Like you pointed out in your awesome introduction, the Milgram experiment, we saw how when people were highly affected by who's in the room and who says what, but the more people that we have out there saying, hey, let's ask some more questions, let's consider changing our mind, because the way we've been thinking has been leading us to these same repetitious problems, the better we can look at all the different alternative pathways forward that might be more beneficial. So as we close up, I'm going to go ahead and bring up a screen share, if I can manage to do that with my technology here. And if you guys want to just talk about where we're going with Health Revealed going forward, and any hopes or dreams or resources you want to share with people.
Okay. Go ahead, 70.
I want to let you talk, Cory, but
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. You're like, Cory, you're going to... I'm like, oh, gosh. Don't like the spotlight all the time. I like these guys. Okay, I put the spotlight on Leslie, Stephanie, and Scott so much because, like I said, they have a lot of experience and stuff I haven't... Like, I got into so much knowledge from this project. I got way more than I thought. I share with them like all sorts of things that I go through emotionally. They get to hear all of that. poor guys. I'm sorry. And they also hear all the music I sometimes link to them. But you know, music is part of it too. And there's that whole music event happening soon. This event. This whole website, this whole project, healthrevealed.org, is going to be involving a lot of people. You're going to see this evolve a lot over the years. It's probably going to change in form in many different ways. But we are planning on doing, like I said, a weekly show, and then incorporating a lot of clips, incorporating a ton of guests and collaborators for specific projects as well. It's not going to be limited to just a video format. It's going to also include written formats. And by the end of this project, which is not going to be the end, it's going to be ongoing, you're going to see, at least in a couple of years, you can say as a deadline, there's going to be a lot of resources for people regarding health, nutrition, freedom, I think anything in between as well, psychology, exercise, pretty much everything. You know, we're really covering all of it because we're challenging all the institutions. So it's a lot, but that's why we're open to any contributors, anybody who's had even a health experience. Maybe you're not a practitioner and you're just like, hey, I suffered from all these different diseases and look at my journey. I think we'd be interested in that. You know, we want to hear from everybody. We have a form on there for even businesses if they want to put themselves on our map. We also have a little form that you could fill out if you want to potentially be interviewed or collaborate with us. We've got all of our slides up there. I would like help from people who want to maybe work with us when it comes to clipping our content. There's a lot of videos that we have done that it would be nice to get into short form content. Just so you guys know, I've posted, hundreds of videos over the years. If you look at my analytics, 90% of my views are from short form content. That is 1 minute or less. That's 90%. So the majority of the audience overwhelmingly is from short based content. And I think that can lead people to longer content. But I think we need to work together on that. For anybody listening, I think no matter who you are, you have a place to work with us on this project. We all need to heal. We all need to create better environments. So why not, right? There was a lot I found out about myself that I did not know. And by doing this project, I found that out. I had this sort of like ego awakening that I detailed on my channel. And to be fair, we were just talking about technology. That has affected me tremendously. And I don't get really headaches anymore, but I used to get insane headaches producing my content, just overworking, like overthinking. And I had no way of really decompressing other than going out into nature. And through this project, I realized, I could do Qigong, I could do meditation, and some of these Soma practices, and just be more mindful in general. So that way these things don't happen again. Right? Because I am programmed even into the language I use, right? Kind of from a computing standpoint, you put this in order, you put this in order, you put this in order. It's very linear. And that creative side of me, which I've always had as a child, can get suppressed as you get older and adulterated and have to form words together and create sentences and then create books. Part of the reason why I want to create a fictional work, which I don't know if I'll get to. But the point is that I think it's all about opening our minds and seeing the parts of ourselves that we don't see or utilize. And that's how we can become a more holistic self in a more holistic world.
Well, thanks, Cory. I'm super impressed by what you put together and your whole team, and looking forward to seeing where this goes. And I hope that it can reach hundreds, thousands, millions of people. And I don't see why not. I mean, everybody's been through these traumatic experiences, and a lot of us need this type of therapy of hearing someone else talk about these things. And it releases an incredible burden to realize that we don't have to solve all these problems alone. We have each other, and we all have these talents and gifts, and a lot of resources are out there if we just, like we talked about, change our mind and open our hearts and start caring, putting our care in the right place. So I hope you guys can consider coming back on the End Evil podcast down the road, maybe a few months, and so we can kind of see how things have changed and some of the more work you've done. But I also hope people check out what you have done. There's a lot out there. I was just showing the YouTube page and healthrevealed.org, and people check out their interviews with Mike Adams. That was a really big deal. They all met up in person in Texas, and this whole crew got together and went on this professional podcast that reached a lot of people. And so if you haven't checked that out, check that out. Any last words? Thanks so much, folks. Go ahead if anyone wanted to shout out their website or say goodbye to our listeners.
I want to thank you, Chris, for bringing us on today and this opportunity. I really loved your questions, and this conversation was really wonderful. Thank you, Cory. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Scott. Really proud to be part of this team.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you to Chris as well. Again, I'm sorry for being late, and thank you to everyone, my team. You guys are so amazing. I do want to say that I tend to hold a position where I keep a pulse on the kind of most up-to-date medical providers, a lot on X and different social media channels on some of the awakening physicians out there regarding our material. And I've managed to get in touch with some of them, share our work with some of them, some very big names in the health field. And what I will say is, from my observation and research, and I do a lot each day, is that the repository of information that Cory and we have been able to put together is so incredibly vast and still very ahead of even the most cutting edge physicians and providers in this awakening movement. You may hear them, starting to talk about certain material on one of our slides as some new knowledge they're coming into that's blowing their mind. And really, the repository of information that's here is so incredibly vast. I think it's going to, like Cory said, just continue over the years as people are able to not just come into the knowledge, but to be able to assimilate it. This is complex information, and you need a bandwidth to be able to assimilate this sort of a lengthy presentation, because it really does knock your socks off. It shakes you to awaken you, and if you're not really ready for it, it can be off-putting to some people. So Cory, thank you. Your foresight, your insight was really brilliant, and I couldn't be more happy to continue to be a part of this team. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Right on. Fantastic show. And we'll have these guys back. And in the meantime, folks, care about yourself and the people around you, and care to ask those questions. And evil is the destruction of freedom.
So, natural law is a set of universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable conditions which govern the consequences of behavior of beings with the capacity for understanding the difference between harmful and non-harmful behavior.
Funnel 5.
This book and this moment are urging you to pause. The book that changed my life. Are you ready to start your new life? Are you ready to awaken to the purpose and the passion that's been waiting inside of you all along? Check out endevil.life. Evil is the destruction of freedom.
It's time to free the warriors, my friends. We got too many people locked up by the state, and they're counting on us to use our voices.
Intention. I'm living in this world and not of it. And how can you set something free if you don't love it?
Establish our identity. We have to understand who we are and where we fit in the natural order of the world.
33.
The people who have created this system and they perpetuate this system, they are out of balance. They have made us out of balance.
I woke up this morning feeling I had something to say. I got doubts on my mind, it's time to let them fly away. It's time to unlearn poison and heal broken hearts. Go back to the end, it's time for a fresh start.
I'm repping this gameplay, queen of my future like in a chess game. Bitches better make way, snitches make no mistakes. The slip of the tongue will make me accidentally slip a switchblade. Don't take my kindness for frivolous, take my time away from me. I'ma make you see what the fuck I call ghetto discipline, or you better grab a water bottle.
So what we have here is a multinational, multi-generational, parasitic ruling class, raping the earth of its resources and driving humanity deeper in the bottom. And then emerging from the shadows comes a white warrior determined, resisting the system of violence and coercion. Learn how to spot the workings of the men behind the curtain.
Labor Day weekend, Soundpath to Freedom. We're gonna show them what a soundtrack is like to this movement. It's grassroots, and speak the truth. Come and be part of it. Once in a lifetime, never forgotten.
I heard that one man's voice say nothing, that ain't gonna do nothing. Do what I will, I'm scientific with it. Gunners, my tongue never caught me with it. Telling the truth, they said I'm doing terrific. Dope boy music for real, can't be no dope boy until you flip it. Honor the spirit, switch it. If you're a real man, free your mind, don't be half walk, half walk.